In this next video, I'm going to walk us through how to do descriptive statistics using Excel. But first, I want to show everybody how you go about computing total scores and mean scores for a scale, using this example with the CESD scale. Now, I also wanted to show you what you do with reverse scored items, because as you go out in your careers, if you're using standardized instruments, sometimes these instruments are going to have a reverse scored item. Now, just to refresh everybody, a reverse scored item basically asks the opposite question of whatever construct it is you're measuring. So in here, with a depression scale, let's look at item 1, for instance. I was bothered by things that usually don't bother me. If you select 3, which means most of the time, that would be an indication of depression. Now let's go down to item 4. I felt I was just as good as other people. If you select that same score, a 3, and indicate most of the time, that's actually indicating that you are not depressed. So if you hit 0 or scored 0 on that item, that would mean that you are depressed. So we want to make sure that if someone hit a 3, when we compute a total depression score, we recode that 3 to be a 0. Or if they selected a 2, we want to recode that 2 to be a 1. So basically, I'm just reviewing what a reverse scored item means. Now, in the CESD scale, there are actually 4 reverse scored items: CESD 4, 8, 12, and 16. Now in Excel, how we reverse score items, basically it's a simple formula where you take the highest possible score on that scale and then subtract from that the person's actual score. So because this is based on a 4-point Likert ranging from 0 to 3, to get someone's reverse score for, let's use RCESD4 for example, what we would want to do is figure out where does the CESD4 value start. That's on I4. And we simply want to do a function in Excel. So we hit the equal sign, 3 minus I4. And then we hit enter. Now, it automatically did it for all the different rows in this table. And essentially, it gave us the reverse scored items for RCSD4. And the way to double check to make sure that the reverse scored function that you performed did it as you expected, what you want to do is simply add the original item and then the reverse scored item, and they should add to the highest maximum value for that item, which would be a 3. So here what we want to do is on a blank cell, hit equals I4 plus Z4, which is the reverse scored item, and then hit enter. And that should be a 3. And then if we use our magic function by clicking and dragging down, here we see that there are 3s for all of the different rows or all the different participants. Okay, so what I'm going to quickly do is reverse score 8, 12, and 16. So here we start on M4, so we're going to do an equals 3 minus M4, enter. There are reverse scored items for item CESD8. And then we can see that 12 begins on Q4, so we're going to do equals 3 minus Q4. And then RCESD16, item 16 begins on U4, so we're going to do an equals 3 minus U4. And now that we have our reverse scored items, we can compute the total scores and the mean scores. So to do a total score, I indicated this in the code book, but essentially what that looks like in Excel is an equals the sum and then all of the different items that you want to include in that sum computation. You basically are adding all the different items. And here you'll see that we don't want to use the original CESD4 item or any of the original reverse scored items, but we want to use the newly created reverse scored items for 4, 8, 12, and 16. So how you do that command is an equals sum, and then in parentheses we want to specify our different ranges. So it would be CSD 1 to 3, that's E4 to G4. And then we want to then specify CESD, oh no, see, I accidentally clicked on gender instead of the first CESD item. So you definitely don't want that. So we actually start on F4, and then we go to H4. And then we skip the original CSD4 item and go to J4 to L4, comma, and then we go to N4 to P4, comma, and then lastly, not lastly, we go to R4 to T4, comma, and then lastly, we can go to V4 all the way through to include all of our reverse scored items. So that would be from V4 to AC4. Close the parenthesis, hit enter, and there we get the total scores for all the individuals in our data set. Now, we also want to compute the mean scores for all individuals on the CESD scale. And for this, what we can do is, because we're using the same range of items that we are for the sum, we're just asking for the average instead of the total. You can copy and paste this. I just copied it by hitting Command C, and then go over to the next column for the means, and then we'll begin our formula with an equal sign, and here instead of sum we're going to specify average, and then we're going to paste those cells that we want included in the average, and then hit return. Now that is how you compute the total and the mean for a scale. So what I'm going to do here is just delete these verifications that reverse scores occurred. And then I'm going to walk us through how we do basically the descriptive statistics, beginning with the mean, and then also median, mode, range, and standard deviation, which I will just call an abbreviated SV. Okay. Now, to get the average, we basically do the exact same formula that we did to get the CESD mean average, but instead of getting individuals' average scores, we want here in our descriptive statistics to get the average of the entire sample. So what is our sample score of depression? And how we do that is we begin with an equal sign, we specify average, then we use a different cell range. We want the range of AE4 to AE33 if we're looking at the mean CESD mean scores. We hit enter, and there we can see that the average CESD depression score of the 30 participants in our sample is a 2.29. Now to get the median, instead of average, we simply specify median, and then we again input our range, AE4 to AE33. Close the parenthesis, hit enter. To get the mode, we do an equal sign mode, AE4 to AE33, close parenthesis. We can see that the mode of this is a 2. Now generally with a sample, mode doesn't mean quite as much as opposed to looking at like how people scored, for instance, like on a particular item. Because the average is going to include so much variance around like the 10th and 100th percentile, we generally wouldn't look at mode for an entire data set on a statistic such as average, but I just wanted to include it here so you could see how to do it. And then the range is a little different, where basically a range is defined as the maximum score minus the minimum. So we have to actually specify max and then the range AE4 to AE33 minus the minimum, which is min in Excel, AE4 to AE33, close parenthesis, enter. You can see that from the highest depression score to the lowest, there's 1.10, or the range. And then to get the standard deviation, we want to hit equals standard dev .s parenthesis, specify our range, and that gives you the standard deviation. Now, that's essentially how you do it by clicking and typing in the formulas, but you can also use the data analysis, descriptive option, descriptive statistics, to get the same numbers. So for the input range, we would simply specify AE4 to AE33. It's grouped by columns. The output range, we can select that we want to output them right there, or any blank cell in the data set, and then click OK. Ooh, we didn't click a statistical option. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this gives us the mean, standard error of the mean, the median, mode, standard deviation, kurtosis skewness, the range, and a bunch of other stuff. The minimum value, maximum value, the sum of all means, the count, and a confidence level, a 95% confidence level. Basically, the only things we really need to worry about when reporting descriptive statistics are the mean, possibly the median, the standard deviation, and the range. Sometimes minimum and maximum values are included, and the things like standard error, kurtosis skewness, those are things that we can worry about at a future date when we move into inferential statistics.